Hi, hello, how are we? Welcome back to our channel. It's Anna. We have a very exciting video today. You probably already can tell by the title of the video, but if you can't, we're gonna be dyeing yarn. It's just RIT, like RIT dye. We're using RIT dye to dye yarn today. My lovely friends over at RIT Dye were so kind enough to send me some dyes to use to try yarn dyeing for my first time ever. I'm very excited. We need to run to the store super quick to get some dyeing things. That sounds a little odd. And then after that, we're gonna jump into the actual dyeing process. We're gonna be using the dyes that they sent over, obviously, and I'm going to show you guys when that time comes what we're gonna be making. We're gonna be making 5 different colorways in total, and stay tuned to the end of the video to learn how you can win all of the yarns yourself. So, we really just jumped right into today's video. I'm gonna go to the store, I'm gonna get whatever I need, and then we're gonna jump into yarn dyeing. And then maybe also dye this hat, because it's dyeable. What color should we do? I don't know. It's gonna be so fun. This is the yarn that I'm using. It is superwash worsted weight wool. I have these 100-gram, I don't know what you would call this, undone hanks. I have 2 I'm gonna do for each color. So 200 grams total for each color, plus an additional 50-gram mini skein that I'm going to use for a giveaway. So I'm dyeing 3 skeins, hanks, whatever you call this. I don't know what you call this, whatever it is. I'm dyeing 3 per color, and we're doing 4 colors. I don't know if I said 5 in the beginning. I thought I was going to do 5. I'm only going to do 4. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to wash all of these just to get the dirt and debris off. I put little strings around so I can keep it untangled, and we're gonna just jump right into it. I have all of my yarn washed. It is each in their respective tin pan, and let me tell you the dyes that I'm gonna be using, as well as the ideas that I have. I realized I didn't tell you any of that. Okay, first of all, RIT Dye sent me a bunch of colors. I'm using almost all of them. The only one I'm not using is a green that they sent me because I thought that I bought enough to make 5 different colorways. Only bought enough to make 4. That's totally fine. We're just gonna have to dye yarn again. Oh well. The first color that I'm doing is royal blue. I just really like this blue color. It looks dark and a little bit gray, and I think I want to do that as my only straight solid colorway. I think it'll look really pretty, and I think I would almost prefer for it to come out a little bit splotchy, not perfectly totally saturated. I really like that organic look of dyed yarn. I feel like that's the charm of hand dyed yarn. So we're gonna do just blue for one pan. We are going to do just coral for another. So I actually just straight up lied to you. We're doing 2 solid colorways. Sorry about that one. So we're gonna do just coral, but I'm gonna mix this with a teensy bit of brown, I think, to hopefully make the pink color I like, and we're also going to dilute it so it's not going to be this bright, so we can hopefully get a nice light Anna-ish pink. We are also going to use coral with golden yellow, and we're going to do a cute little mix moment, and I'm hoping that they will mix together and form a really pretty orange in the areas that the colors touch. I just think that colorway looks really nice together. I love yellow, obviously I love pink, and I just think that the colors work super nice together. I think it'll just turn out really pretty if all things go well. And lastly, we have dark brown. I'm going to use this one to create a colorway based off of coffee. I have different meanings behind each color that I chose, but this one is the most like succinct. I can explain it, I guess. I love coffee. I feel like I talk about it a lot, but maybe I don't talk about it on this channel a lot. Who knows? I don't know. I love coffee. So what I want to do is do a multicolor brown colorway where it's lighter, it's darker. The idea in my head is almost like you just poured your creamer into your coffee. So that is the inspiration behind this one. We're going to do different levels of like diluting it and stuff, as well as I think on top in some of the areas we're going to sprinkle some of the dark brown dye powder. So all of those were liquid dyes except for this one. This one is a dye powder. I think we're going to put this on right at the end of that one. So those are the colors that I'm going with. That is the goal. I'm probably not going to talk for a while as I do this, but we'll see. My mom should be back in a little bit to help me as well. So wish me luck, because while I did do a good amount of research for this, I am probably not as well researched as I should be. Alrighty, so I ended up really not talking like at all during this part of the video, so I figured I'd just pop on with a voiceover and kind of explain what I'm doing as I go, kind of to like the best of my abilities. Obviously I'm not teaching you guys how to do anything, but I figured I could at least like explain, you know, what's going on. So I started, like I said, by rinsing off all the yarn just to make sure it was clean. Then I saturated it with either just water or water and an acid. In this case, I was using vinegar. It depended on the yarn. Don't ask about the science. I can't really explain it. And then I started with the blue color, as you can see. My original idea was for it to be completely one-tone blue, but I didn't really know how to mix the dye with the water to get the right dilution. So we ended up doing a dark blue to a light blue, and it ended up looking really pretty, kind of like water. For this second one, we're doing, I believe, coral and yellow, which in my opinion was probably my favorite out of all of them. The colors just melded really nicely. It was really fun to kind of mix the colors as I was pouring them onto the yarn. So as you can see, I'm starting here with the yellow, and I'm just doing it in like a very sporadic fashion. And I believe with this one I started with an acid, so it would shock the color as soon as it hit the yarn. And then I'm going through and I'm adding some of the coral color a little bit more sporadically, kind of hitting a little bit where I had the yellow, a little bit where it was just the bare yarn, and I'm just slowly going through and filling it in to make sure I got all of the areas, and then just making sure like it hits all the yarn. So like I flipped it over and I made sure that the other side was just as saturated as this first side. So next, because I already have the coral out from that last dye, I just ended up doing the fully coral one for this next batch. And what I did was I put, same thing, the liquid down. I mixed the coral color with a little touch of brown just to make it not necessarily more muted, but a more brown tone. That's just what I like most in a pink color, as well as some water. But as you can see, even diluting it with water, it was still super insanely pigmented, which obviously is not a bad thing. RIT dye is great for that reason. It's just not what I was expecting. I don't really know what I was expecting, but because this was my first time doing it, I didn't really know what to expect. So I just, you know, made sure all the yarn was covered as I did with the other ones. I kind of hit some areas by this point where I hadn't hit it before because the dye was taking so quickly to the yarn that I didn't really have time to like just let it sit and like soak in. It shocked it very quickly, which is fine, but it's all different than what I was expecting. So it's all a learning process at the end of the day. And then with this one, this is the last shade we're doing. This is brown. This yarn overall came out darker than I kind of anticipated it would. I started with my lightest color, so like the most water versus dye ratio. This was most favoring water. It always is, but this had like the least amount of dye in it, is what I'm trying to say. But even so, it came out much darker than anticipated, so it really goes to show that you need much more water in this process than dye. I really thought it was going to be vice versa. I don't really know what I was expecting, but it just ended up coming out much darker than anticipated. I went lightest to darkest, and it still turned out too dark, so I'm going to try this shade again definitely because I think it can look really, really pretty. I just want to make sure that I'm, you know, letting the light areas be light and the dark areas be dark, because that's super important if you want to have good contrast. And similarly to with other yarns, the dye was shocking very quickly to the yarn, which I was shocked by, so I just flipped it over and made sure everything was covered. I also am wearing a mask because I tried the powder dye at one point. I will explain more at the end of the video why I didn't love it, so that's why I cut it out of the video, but that's why I was wearing a mask all of a sudden. And by this point, I'm just rinsing out the dye from the yarn. As you can see in this one, there is still some blue in the pan, but it took almost entirely. I know I could have left it in the heat for longer and the dye would have continued to take into the yarn, but I was happy where it was at, and I rinsed it out and it rinsed clear, so that's kind of all that mattered. This is the yellow and coral, had those beautiful orange areas, and then the last one you see me rinse out is the brown one.
I honestly cannot tell you where my film went for rinsing out the coral. It rinsed out exactly the same. Like, it's not that, important, but it just randomly disappeared on me. So that is it for voiceover Anna. You will soon have Rit Hat Anna coming back at you again to show you all the yarns and all that good stuff.
Hello, it is a couple days later. I am still wearing my red hat. Honestly, didn't even put it on to like promo them more. I just really like this hat. Thank you, Rit. Anyways, regardless, I finished the yarn. It's dry. I'm gonna show it to you because yarn dyeing is a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be. Like, I don't know why I thought it was just gonna be like colors on yarn. This is so simple. It's not, guys. Who was gonna tell me that it's not? This is the first one. This was the blue. I honestly think that this dark blue part is breathtakingly stunning. It dried a little bit lighter than it looked when it was wet, which is not shocking. But I think the dark fading into the light is honestly really fun. I would love to get better at understanding how to do an ombre effect, just because the lighter part of the yarn does have more inconsistencies than the darker part. So I'd love to learn how to do it and make it a little more of a smooth transition so that all of the yarn has this nice light blue color. I do like variation in yarn, but I kind of wish that this was a little more solid color from dark to light, if that makes sense. But I think this came out really, really pretty. I have another skein of that. And this is how the tiny skein came out. So cute. These strings are just the cotton yarn that I put on to hold as I dyed the yarn. But this came out so cute. I'm super obsessed with how this hank looks. This next one is the all coral one. I think that the variation in this one is stunning. I really enjoy it. I like the orangey tones, and I think adding the little bit of brown added some fun darker parts throughout the yarn. My only qualm with this is I wish the whole thing was a little bit lighter. My ideal pink is this tone or something similar to this tone, but it's the lighter version of it. I'm very much a muted color palette person, so I wish it was a little bit lighter. However, I think this is still super pretty. I'm so excited to see how it works out. And this is how it looks on the tiny skein. Once again, so gorgeous. Honestly, all the tiny skeins came out really great, which is awesome. I wasn't sure if they would get a little bit lost in the bigger skeins, but they all look good. This next one is the yellowy pinky one. There's some gorgeous orange tones in here. That did exactly what I wanted it to. Colors blended. It looks stunning. Literally so excited to see how this one looks worked up. Once again, my only qualm is that I wish it was a little bit more muted. That is just more my style, but I think that the variation and the mix of colors does still look super pretty regardless. I can't complain about that. And then this is the tiny skein version. It's even more vibrant than the big skeins because it got much more color saturation, I think, because it's smaller, you know what I mean? But I still think it's super pretty. The yellow and the coral mixed together so nicely. So I think once again another success with the tiny. And then last but certainly not least, we have this brown variation one. It definitely came out entirely a little bit too dark, but I still think my idea is there of the putting the creamer into coffee. You have some lighter bits, you have some darker bits, so I think that's super gorgeous. My only downside to this one, yes, I wish it was a little bit lighter, and I wish the brown was less gray toned and more warm toned because I'm a more warm toned brown girl. My biggest issue though was I don't like how the speckling came out on this, and you can see it a little bit. Specifically, you can see it right here. It looks kind of blue. What I realized as it was dyeing the yarn, I had already sprinkled it on, it was causing it to be red and yellow and blue, and I was like, why is that happening? And then I realized brown is all of the colors mixed together, and that's why it was coming out all of the colors. So not super ideal, but it's okay. I think the brown covered up most of it in most areas. So didn't love that about the speckle, the powder dye I should say, but that's all right. I'd like to try powder dye again in a more distinct color. Like I said, brown's mixed with everything. So if I could just do red or just do yellow, I think that would be more interesting, and hopefully I'd have more success with the outcome that I want. Just didn't love it with the brown. But I think the tiny skein honestly came out better than the big skeins on this one. It is gorgeous. It has the light areas, it has the dark areas. It didn't get too dark opposed to the bigger ones that got a little bit too dark. So I think this one came out really, really nice. So yeah, this was my first attempt dyeing yarn. This is what we got. I think it's so cute. I am honestly proud of myself for this being my first attempt. I would like to do this again because I feel like I have to redeem myself a little bit. I don't think it went bad. Like I just said, I don't think that I'm redeeming myself in a way of like I failed. But I would like to try to get to those light muted colors that I wanted, and I think that's just gonna take some trial and error. I would like to try this again because it was pretty fun trying it the first time. And if you guys like my colorways, this little 4-pack, these are each 50 grams of the superwash merino wool. It's medium weight. If you guys like this, you have a chance to win it over on my Instagram, so make sure to check it out. It is just Crochet by AK. It's also linked down below. But yeah, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you guys found it entertaining. I hope it was fun to watch the process come alive. It was definitely interesting to try to figure out how to dye yarn for the first time. Thank you so much to Rit once again for sending this dye over. It was super fun to experiment, and as we know, I love the hat. And let me know if you guys want more videos like this. I definitely want to try more things in the yarn sphere rather than just crocheting and knitting. So if there are other things you want to see me do, let me know. I definitely like to try them out when I have the time. But yeah, with all that being said, that is all I have for this week's video. If you guys liked it, make sure to like and subscribe. It helps me out so much, as well as hit that post notification bell if you want to know every single time I post a brand new video. If you're interested in buying any of my patterns or anything like that, following my socials, everything you need to stay up to date with me is linked down below. I'm much more informal on my Instagram and my TikTok, so if you want to hang out there, by all means join us. If you don't want to, that's fine too. You can keep chilling here, I don't mind. But yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in today's video. Hope you enjoyed. I love you all so very dearly, and I will see you next time with a brand new video. Bye everybody.